fight scene, I believe, with you and Hector, is that right?
Eric Bana, played by Eric Bana.
We've spent 3 decades watching Leonardo DiCaprio conquer every peak Hollywood has to offer. We've seen him survive the Titanic, rule Wall Street, and finally freeze fist his way to an Oscar. But as the clock strikes 51, a different story is beginning to emerge. Behind the yachts, the supermodels, and the $20 million paychecks, there's a quiet, almost haunting reality. The boy who never wanted to grow up might finally be realizing that the world grew up without him. Today, we're looking at the heartbreaking paradox of being the world's most famous man, yet seemingly trapped in a cycle he can't break. A childhood that didn't follow a straight line. Long before the fame turned him into a symbol, before the world began projecting meaning onto every move he made, Leonardo DiCaprio entered the world as something far simpler. Just a child born into a life that already carried contrasts he didn't choose. He was born on November 11, 1974, in Los Angeles. The only child of 2 people who came from completely different worlds, yet somehow met in the same place. His mother, Irmelin Indenbergen, brought with her the discipline and quiet strength of her German roots, while his father, George DiCaprio, moved through life with a kind of restless creativity, immersed in underground comics, far from anything structured or predictable. Their relationship had begun in college, carried by shared ambition and youth, but by the time Leonardo arrived, that sense of unity was already fragile. Even his name carried a story that felt almost too symbolic to ignore. Before he was born, while his mother stood in a museum in Florence staring at a painting by Leonardo da Vinci, she felt him kick for the first time. It was a small, private moment, yet it stayed with her long enough to become permanent. She named him Leonardo, not knowing that the name would one day carry a weight he would spend his entire life trying to live up to or escape from. But whatever sense of meaning that moment held, life moved quickly in a different direction. By the time he turned 1, the illusion of a stable home had already broken. His parents separated after his father fell in love with someone else, and just like that, the idea of a traditional upbringing disappeared. What replaced it was something more complicated, but strangely intentional. Instead of drifting apart completely, they chose proximity. 2 small cottages in Echo Park, sharing a garden and sharing responsibility, but no longer sharing a life. It was an arrangement that looked balanced from the outside, yet underneath it, there was a quiet understanding that things had already changed. His father's new life came with new people, including a stepson, Adam Ferrar. And in that space, Leonardo found a connection that felt natural, almost necessary. At the same time, his mother remained the constant force in his life, steady, present, and deeply trusted. He would later see both of them as bohemian in every sense, not as a criticism, but as a reflection of the unconventional world he was growing up in. And that world didn't come softened. He moved through neighborhoods that exposed him to things most children are protected from, places where crime, violence, and survival weren't distant ideas, but everyday realities. It wasn't just background noise, it shaped how he saw people, how he observed behavior, and how he understood emotion long before he had the language to explain it. School, in contrast, felt disconnected from all of that. He attended the Los Angeles Center for Enriched Studies, then Seeds Elementary, then John Marshall High School, but none of it seemed to hold his attention in the way it was supposed to. It wasn't that he couldn't keep up, it was that he didn't want to stay still. The idea of sitting in a classroom while something else called him felt almost impossible to ignore. Eventually, he made a decision that most people would hesitate to make. He walked away from that path and later secured his GED, choosing movement over structure, instinct over expectation. As a child, he imagined 2 very different futures. One is grounded in science as a marine biologist, the other rooted in performance. But the second option kept pulling him back, not because it was easier, but because it felt natural. He liked stepping into other people, mimicking voices, studying reactions, and watching how a room could shift depending on what he did. That awareness showed itself early. At just 2 years old, he walked onto a stage during a festival and started dancing. Not planned, not rehearsed, just reacting to the moment. And when the crowd responded, something clicked. It wasn't just applause, it was recognition. a realization that he could create a reaction simply by being present in a certain way. Still, the path forward didn't come clean. There were distractions, almost detours that could have taken him somewhere completely different. At one point, after placing second in a breakdancing competition in Germany, he came close to leaving acting behind entirely. It wasn't a dramatic turning point at the time, just another option that felt real enough to consider. But acting kept finding its way back. By 14, he had started appearing in commercials, small roles that didn't promise anything but gave him a foothold. Matchbox cars, Kraft singles, Bubble Yum, and Apple Jacks. Each one a step forward, even if it didn't feel like progress yet. Around that time, he also appeared in The New Lassie, taking on a minor role that quietly added to his growing experience. And yet, even with all of that, nothing came easy. At the start of his career, even getting representation felt like a battle. And when he finally did, the advice he received cut straight to the core of how the industry saw him. He was told his name didn't fit, that it needed to be changed to something more acceptable, something easier to sell. Lenny Williams. A different identity, designed to make him more digestible. He didn't accept it, and for that decision, he paid the price. For a year and a half, he went without work, moving through over 100 auditions with nothing to show for it. The rejection wasn't occasional, it was constant. And slowly, it built into something heavier, something that made him question whether this path was even worth continuing. He reached a point where walking away felt like the only logical option. But his father didn't let that happen. Without promising success, without offering guarantees, he pushed him to keep going, to stay in the fight just a little longer. And eventually, something changed. A connection through someone close to his mother opened a door, not wide, but enough. From there, the momentum began to build again, one role at a time. By the early 1990s, he started finding consistency. He appeared in The Outsiders, then in Santa Barbara, where he played a troubled teenager, and then in Parenthood, a role that demanded more from him. This time, he didn't just show up. He prepared. He studied, even looking closely at Joaquin Phoenix's performance in the original film, breaking it down, understanding it, and making it his own. And for the first time, it paid off. Recognition came in the form of award nominations, small but significant, a sign that people were starting to see something in him that had always been there, the career that kept moving forward. There's a point in every career where the struggle stops being invisible, where the quiet grind gives way to something louder, something harder to control. For Leonardo DiCaprio, that moment didn't arrive all at once. It built slowly, through roles that almost felt disposable at first, before turning into something that would define him in ways he didn't fully understand yet. It started in 1991 with Critters 3, a low-budget horror sequel that barely registered with audiences and meant even less to him. He would later look back on it as the kind of role he wanted to avoid, something flat, something forgettable, a version of himself that didn't reflect what he knew he could do. And yet, it was still a beginning, even if it didn't feel like one. From there, he stepped into television, joining Growing Pains as Luke Brower, a homeless boy taken in by a family that wasn't his own. It was a role that gave him more room and more presence, and people began to notice something beneath the surface. He came across as sharp, instinctive, and easy to watch, even when he wasn't trying. Off-screen, there was a different energy. Playful, restless, and sometimes disruptive, he was the kind of presence that made it clear he wasn't built to stay in one place for too long. The role brought him recognition, even a nomination, but it didn't anchor him. If anything, it showed him how temporary everything still was. Then came the shift. In 1992, he was chosen by Robert De Niro from hundreds of young actors to star in This Boy's Life, and for the first time, the stakes felt real. This wasn't just another role, it was a test. Acting alongside someone as established and controlled as De Niro forced him to confront a different level of discipline. On set, that adjustment wasn't immediate. He was still rough around the edges, still figuring out how to exist within that kind of structure, but under firm direction, something sharpened. His performance carried weight, not just effort. And when the film was released, people paid attention. That attention only deepened with What's Eating Gilbert Grape in 1993. Cast alongside Johnny Depp, he took on a role that could have easily been mishandled, playing a developmentally disabled boy in a story already grounded in quiet dysfunction. At first, there was doubt about him. He didn't look like the part. He seemed too polished, too composed. But once he stepped into the audition, that doubt disappeared. He observed, studied, and built the character from real behaviors. And what came out of it was something difficult to ignore. The performance wasn't just convincing, it was unsettling in its honesty. At 19, he found himself nominated for an Academy Award. And just like that, the industry stopped seeing him as potential and started seeing him as something real. But what followed wasn't a straight rise. It was a series of choices that felt almost deliberate in their unpredictability. In 1995, he stepped into The Quick and the Dead, a Western that struggled both critically and commercially, despite the backing of Sharon Stone, who believed in him enough to personally support his casting. That same year, he took on Total Eclipse, stepping into the role of poet Arthur Rimbaud in a story that explored identity, obsession, and a relationship that pushed boundaries. It wasn't a commercial success, but that didn't seem to matter. At that stage, he wasn't chasing approval. He was chasing something harder to define, something that proved he wasn't just another face the audience could easily label. And then, right when it seemed like he was building towards something grounded, everything changed again. He turned down Boogie Nights. At the time, it was just another decision, one of many. But in its place, he chose Titanic, stepping into a story that would change everything, whether he was ready for it or not. Directed by James Cameron and starring alongside Kate Winslet, the film wasn't just ambitious. It was massive, expensive, risky, and uncertain. Even he had doubts about it. But once it was released, none of that hesitation mattered anymore. Titanic didn't just succeed, it took over. The film became the highest-grossing movie of its time, pulling in billions, winning 11 Academy Awards and turning Leonardo DiCaprio into something beyond an actor. He became a phenomenon, the kind of fame that didn't just follow him, but surrounded him, reshaped him, and reduced him into an image that the world could consume. Leo mania. It sounded harmless, almost flattering, but underneath it, there was something else, a loss of control. He was no longer just choosing roles. He was carrying expectations. The industry began to see him as a romantic lead, a symbol, something fixed. And almost immediately, he started pulling away from it. Because success at that level came with a cost he wasn't interested in paying forever. He moved into projects like The Man in the Iron Mask and Celebrity, testing different spaces and different identities. But the reactions were mixed. Some saw the talent, others saw wasted potential. It didn't settle into anything stable, and maybe that was the point. He wasn't trying to repeat himself. After the noise of the Titanic, he stepped back. Not completely, but enough to regain control. He spoke about needing to hear his own voice again, to separate himself from the version of him the world had created. The fame had reached a level he didn't connect with, and instead of chasing it further, he chose to step away from that intensity. That decision led him into The Beach. The film performed well commercially, but criticism followed, both for the story and for the impact the production had on its filming location. It became another reminder that success didn't always come clean, and that even the right choices could carry consequences. And yet, instead of slowing down, he began aligning himself with something more deliberate. In 2002, he stepped into Gangs of New York, beginning a long collaboration with Martin Scorsese, a partnership that would redefine his career in a way no single role ever could. That same year, he starred in Catch Me If You Can alongside Tom Hanks, balancing charm and deception in a performance that felt effortless but precise. Then came Inception, stepping into a world built on ideas and illusion under Christopher Nolan, followed by Django Unchained with Quentin Tarantino, where he embraced a darker, more dangerous role without hesitation. By the time he reached The Wolf of Wall Street, he wasn't just acting anymore. He was commanding the screen, fully in control of the chaos his characters carried. And still, something remained unfinished. For years, the Academy Award had stayed just out of reach, following him, almost defining the conversation around him. Until The Revenant in 2015, where he finally crossed that line, not with glamour, but with something physical, exhausting, and almost punishing. And yet, even after that, the movement didn't stop. He returned with Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, stepping into the role of a fading actor, a reflection that felt almost too close to reality. Then came Don't Look Up, blending satire with urgency, and later, Killers of the Flower Moon, reuniting with Scorsese and De Niro in a story grounded in history and consequence. By 2025, with one battle after another, he was still moving forward, still searching, still refusing to settle into a single version of himself. The love story that doesn't move forward. Chapter 3, The Love Story That Never Moves. For all the ways Leonardo DiCaprio has evolved on screen, there's one part of his life that seems to stay exactly where it started. Not his fame, not his choices as an actor, his relationships. Because over the years, a pattern has formed so clearly that it no longer feels like speculation. It feels like something fixed. And once you see it, it's hard to look at his love life the same way again. At first, it just looked like preference. A successful actor dating young, high-profile models. It fit the lifestyle. It fit the image. But as time passed and nothing about that pattern shifted, people started paying closer attention. And what they noticed was simple. Most of the women he's dated have been in their early 20s, and almost none of them seem to stay once they move beyond that. According to an insider, there's a reason behind it. By the time a woman reaches her mid-20s, she begins to want something more stable, something lasting, marriage, a future. And that, reportedly, is where things stop working for him. He doesn't want a family. He doesn't want that kind of pressure. So before it gets there, the relationship ends. Quietly, predictably, almost like the clock was always ticking from the beginning. And once that idea settled in, it started to line up with everything that came before it. The pattern traces back to the 1990s, when his fame first exploded and his personal life became something people followed closely. One of the earliest names linked to him was Brittany Daniel, after the Basketball Diaries. It didn't last, but it marked the beginning. Then came Kristen Zhang. That relationship lasted 2 years and felt, for a moment, like something more grounded. But it ended with a detail that now feels familiar. She walked away, reportedly because he was too immature. At the time, it sounded like a simple breakup. Looking back, it feels like the first clear sign of a pattern that would repeat itself for decades. As his fame grew, so did the type of women he dated. The late 1990s and early 2000s brought a series of high-profile models into his life. Amber Valletta, Eva Herzegovina, and then Gisele Bündchen. With Gisele, things felt different. They were together for 5 years, long enough for people to believe this might be the relationship that changed everything. But even that ended. The explanation pointed to distance and work, to months spent filming in different parts of the world. He described how relationships get put on hold when he's on location, how everything personal gets pushed aside. It made sense. But then the pattern continued. After Gisele, he moved into another long-term relationship with Bar Raffaele. Again, it lasted years. Again, it looked serious. And then it ended when she was 25. That was when people stopped ignoring it. From there, the relationships became shorter, but they didn't change. Blake Lively appeared briefly in 2011. It was high profile, fast, and gone just as quickly. Then came a series of models whose names started to blur into the same pattern. Madalena Guinea, Erin Heatherton, Toni Guerin, Kelly Rohrbach. Different faces, same outcome. There were even moments that never fully became relationships, like the rumored connection with Rihanna. It was never confirmed, but it still fit into the timeline. And then, for a moment, it seemed like something might finally shift. With Camila Morrone, things lasted longer than expected. Nearly 5 years. It felt more stable, more serious. There were even reports that they had talked about getting engaged. She defended the relationship publicly, pushing back against the constant criticism. She spoke about ignoring the noise, about protecting what felt real instead of explaining it to people who didn't understand it. For a while, it held. Then it ended. There was also a brief connection with Gigi Hadid, but it never fully settled into anything exclusive. It faded quietly. Then came Vittoria Coretti. At first, it looked familiar. Public sightings, late nights, attention. But this time, there were small differences. Reports suggested he was more focused, more present, even exclusive in a way people hadn't seen before. She spoke about love as something steady, something that protects and gives confidence, something that doesn't need constant explanation if it's real. And as of 2025, they were still together. But even with that, the question hasn't gone away. A life that didn't match the message. For years, Leonardo DiCaprio didn't just build a career, he built a cause. He spoke about the planet like it was something fragile, something already slipping through our fingers. He backed it with documentaries, speeches, and millions poured into environmental efforts. And for a long time, that image held. It felt real. It felt convincing. But the more visible that version of him became, the more people started looking at the life around it. And slowly, almost quietly, a different picture began to form. Because behind the speeches about conservation was a lifestyle that didn't always match the message. Reports pointed to 2014, a year where he took around 20 flights. Some were tied to work, which made sense given the scale of his career, but others were not. Trips across the world that felt less like necessity and more like habit. That same summer, he was also seen partying on the yacht of an oil tycoon, an image that sat uncomfortably next to everything he had been advocating for. And that's where the tension began. Because even if those flights had all been commercial, the environmental cost would still have been heavy. But the reality was more complicated than that. Many of those trips involved private jets, the very thing his activism seemed to push against. Then came moments that made the contradiction harder to ignore. In 2016, he flew thousands of miles on a private jet from France to New York just to accept an award for his work on climate change. Around the same time, he reportedly made a round-trip journey from Miami to New York in a single day, again by private jet, to attend a fundraiser. The message stayed the same, but the lifestyle told a different story. And over time, that gap became something critics leaned into. Environmental analyst Robert Rapier argued that this kind of behavior weakened his moral authority, that it undercut the very message he was trying to deliver. Not because the cause itself was wrong, but because the example didn't hold up under scrutiny. It raised a question that didn't go away. Was this about the planet or the image? That same unease followed him into his charity work. Through the Leonardo DiCaprio Foundation, he hosted high-profile auctions meant to support environmental causes. On the surface, it aligned perfectly with everything he stood for, but some of the details behind those events began to draw attention for the wrong reasons. Certain auction items stood out, experiences tied to powerful figures who would later become deeply controversial. Names like Kevin Spacey and Harvey Weinstein appeared in those offerings long before their reputations collapsed under serious allegations. At the time, it may have seemed like access to influence. Looking back, it feels different. Because once those names changed in the public eye, their presence in his orbit became harder to ignore. His team later clarified that the foundation never received payment tied to those particular items. But even with that explanation, the association itself lingered. And it wasn't just the names. Reports from attendees painted a picture of the events themselves that didn't quite match their purpose. Lavish, unrestrained, at times chaotic. The kind of atmosphere that blurred the line between philanthropy and excess. Again, the same pattern. A serious message, surrounded by a lifestyle that didn't fully support it. But this wasn't something new that appeared later in his life. It had been there from the beginning. Long before the activism, before the carefully curated image, there was a version of him that moved differently. In the 1990s, his social circle became known as the Pussy Posse, a group built around excess, attention, and a very public appetite for indulgence. It was part of the culture of the time, something that blended into the chaos of sudden fame. But some of the stories stayed with him, moments that showed a lack of restraint, incidents involving paparazzi, behavior that crossed into recklessness. reports of him throwing objects at photographers, even horse manure, during the filming of Gangs of New York. Stories of his partying habits frustrating people around him, including co-stars like Daniel Day-Lewis and director Martin Scorsese, to the point where distance became necessary just to keep the peace. And then there were the more personal accounts. A journalist once revealed that he left her a drunken message suggesting he would only agree to an interview under inappropriate conditions. Another report claimed that someone connected to actress Elizabeth Berkley filed a lawsuit alleging assault tied to his friend group, though that claim was denied by his representatives. Not all of it was proven. Not all of it was clear, but together it built a picture that never fully disappeared. And then came something even more serious: his connection to Joe Lowe. Lowe wasn't just another name in his circle. He was someone who would later become central to a massive financial scandal involving billions of dollars. Investigators uncovered thousands of messages between them. Their lives overlapped socially. Their connection was close enough to raise questions when everything began to unravel. Lowe donated millions to his foundation. He also gave him expensive gifts, including items tied to Hollywood history, which were later handed over to authorities once the scale of the situation became clear. At the same time, attention turned to the financing of the Wolf of Wall Street, with allegations that some of the money involved traced back to misappropriated funds. When questioned, DiCaprio maintained that the relationship was tied to business and social interaction, nothing more, and legally that line held. The tragedy of Leonardo DiCaprio at 51 is just heartbreaking. Despite the success, the fame, the yachts, and everything that makes Leonardo DiCaprio look untouchable, there's a part of his life that hasn't moved at the same pace as everything else. Because while his career kept pushing forward without pause, something quieter has been running alongside it for years, repeating itself in ways most people never see. He has been living with obsessive-compulsive disorder. And unlike fame, it doesn't step aside or fade into the background. It shows up in small moments and turns them into something heavier. A simple walk becomes a pattern. A movement has to be repeated. A step has to feel right before he can move on. It's not about choice. It's about the feeling that something isn't settled until it's done a certain way. He has spoken about needing to step on specific marks while walking, going back to do it again if it didn't feel right the first time. At one point, getting to set could take far longer than it should have, not because of anything external, but because he was caught in that loop. Stop. Go back. Repeat. And even when he knows it's unnecessary, the urge doesn't disappear. There were times it followed him into work, walking through a doorway, then going back to do it again, touching something more than once before moving forward. Small actions, but impossible to ignore in the moment. Still, he learned to push back, not by stopping it completely, but by recognizing it, by telling himself when it had gone too far, by forcing himself to move on, even when it didn't feel right. It's not clean, it's not easy, but it's control in the only way that works. And in a strange way, that struggle became part of his work. When he played Howard Hughes in The Aviator, he didn't have to imagine the behavior. He understood it, the repetition, the frustration, the way the mind keeps pulling you back into the same action even when you're trying to move forward. And that's where things start to feel different, because when you look at everything together, the success, the discipline, the control he shows in his career, and then this quiet cycle running underneath it, it shifts the picture slightly. Not enough to take anything away from what he's achieved, but enough to make you pause. Because even at 51, even after everything, there are still parts of his life that don't move forward in the same way. And that's the part people don't see. What Leonardo DiCaprio's movie is your favorite? Share your thoughts with us in the comments below. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Also, click the next video shown on your screen. You will enjoy it.